have no one to talk to about this. I don't know if I need advice, support, or anything else. I'm going crazy trying to deal with this. Life has brought me to a dead end, and I am fighting not to lose myself. But at the same time, I doubt what is generally correct in terms of actions, words, and thoughts. Let me start by saying that I am writing this message from a hospital room. Yesterday, around 7:30 a.m., my wife and I were involved in an accident. I escaped with only cuts and bruises. My wife, Amy, has a shattered shoulder, a broken collarbone, 3 broken ribs, and a collapsed lung. Doctors expect her to make a full recovery, but for now, she is being kept in a medically induced coma. Writing this from my phone is hard work, but now I have time. I wouldn't write if everything in our marriage was perfect. This is obvious. But I could never even imagine that my wife was capable of infidelity. My heart is broken. I feel inadequate, as if I have lost a part of myself. And the saddest thing is that this part is only a meter away from me. For the last 3 months, I have felt that we are moving away from each other, but I could not find the reason. We are both 34 years old. Amy and I have known each other since childhood. We started dating in college and continued throughout college. She's the only woman I've ever had sex with. Until recently, she could have said the same thing. We got married a year after graduating from college, and the year after that, we had our first child, Jacob. 3 years later, our daughter Haley was born. I love my children more than life itself. If it weren't for them, I'm not sure I would be here now. Thank God, at the time of the accident, there were no children with us. They spent the night with my parents. We were planning to fly to Florida for a cruise, but the night before, my wife decided to go for a walk with her best friend. Even though I asked her to come home and not drive in the snow, she swore that she and her friend Sarah would just have a couple of drinks since they wouldn't see each other for a week. I went to bed and slept like a baby until 5 a.m. I woke up, looked out the window, and saw that my wife's car was gone, and even more snow had fallen. I thought that Amy and Sarah had had a little too much, and my wife stayed over with her for the night. I got dressed and got into my SUV. Before I left, I texted Amy to tell her not to drive. There was too much snow and I was going to pick her up. The message remained unread. I couldn't count how many times I asked myself, what would happen if she read this message? I'd still be living a lie. I would still have that bad feeling, but I wouldn't be in the absolute nightmare I'm in now. I arrived at Sarah's and stopped in front of her house. I checked the message and it still hadn't been read. I hoped that Amy would read it and be ready when I arrived, but I accepted that I would have to go in and wake her. The front door was unlocked, so I walked in and looked towards the living room. There was no one on the couch. Sarah's bedroom was on the first floor and I didn't want to wake her. So I walked up the stairs to the guest room, opened the door, and my life was over. I remember walking into the room and seeing 2 faces peeking out from under the blanket. I remember bending over and pulling the blanket over me. I remember seeing my wife lying with her head on the bare chest of some man. The next thing I know, Sarah, Amy, and some half-naked guy I've never seen are trying to pull me away from her lover. I would probably be in jail now if they hadn't done that. But I honestly don't remember anything, so rightly or wrongly, I don't feel much regret about it. When I came to my senses, that half-naked guy said that he would take his friend to the hospital. Amy was sobbing. Sarah and I were yelling at each other. I told her and my wife I was leaving and gave Amy 5 minutes to be in my car or not try to get home. She was there in 3 minutes. Driving through snow in this condition is not a good idea, even in a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Suddenly another car entered our lane and we were carried over the guardrail. This is what caused Amy's injuries. The car overturned. Thank God the airbags deployed. We survived. The kids don't even know we had an accident and I didn't call anyone. I probably should have done this. But it's not just the accident. My life has been ruined, and I'm trying to assess the extent of the destruction before involving others in it. I feel numb, but at the same time, I am in terrible pain. And not because of the accident. It seems to me that I don't know the person who lies in this hospital bed next to me. I want to ask her 1,000 damn questions, but honestly, I don't want to know a single answer. Obviously, she doesn't love me anymore. No person who has a soul would cheat on the person they love. So I have to wonder, did she ever love me? And if she wanted to love again, would I want it after what she did? I don't know exactly when she started cheating, but for me, the marriage ended the moment she did it. Vows were broken. She buried our marriage, and we are no longer husband and wife. I need a lawyer to annul our union. After all, she has already done it. Therefore, I am no longer bound by the obligations that I accepted. A huge part of me just wants to get out of this room. I want to call her parents, tell them what she did and what happened, and then say that now let them deal with it. We vowed to be together in joy and sorrow, and that's exactly what I meant. But we are no longer married. Part of me wants to leave her a note and tell her that, unfortunately, the heartbreak happened after she ruined our relationship. The only thing keeping me in this damn room is the children. I really want to see them right now, but I have scratches on my face and neck. If they see me, they will immediately understand that something has happened. As much as I feel that my wife has defiled herself and our family, my children need her. I thought I had a partner for life. And despite how terrible she seemed, children need a mother. There will be conversations that I won't be able to have and won't know where to start. There will be traumas that need kisses and not just words. The father will endure, but he will not be able to replace the mother. Please, someone help me. How can I sit here and look at someone who stabbed me in the back so brutally? Should I call her parents to come over? What will I tell them? I really don't want to be here, especially with her parents. If I don't tell them what she did, they'll still know I'm angry. What on earth am I going to tell my kids? Yes, I can say that we had an accident, but I don't know how to hide my emotions. My wife seems to do this with ease, but when I hate a person, it's immediately visible on my face. The children will understand that I am angry with their mother. How the hell did I end up living this life? I already know that I need to contact a lawyer, I understand that, but how can I deal with this? Update 1. After my first post that day, I decided to stay another night in the hospital room, sitting next to Amy. With the lights off, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, listening to the medical equipment. I lay there wondering how the hell my life had gotten to this point. Part of me felt like I was showing undeserved mercy just by being in the same room with her, and part of it was that I still loved her. I didn't want to feel this love. It seemed to me that I was weak for having any positive feelings towards her. I realized again and again that it was impossible to return everything as it was. It was like a natural disaster that destroyed the entire calm life that we had built. I cried a hell of a lot. I realized that a huge part of my life was over, and this moment meant a lot to me. When the nurse came in to draw blood the next morning, I left the room. When Amy woke up and saw me walking towards the exit, she called me, but I pretended that I didn't hear her. I went to have breakfast. I haven't had much of an appetite since I found out about everything. I tried to pass the time by barely eating and checking my phone. There was a message from Sarah asking where Amy was, which I didn't read. At 7 a.m., I decided it was time to knock on her parents' door. Her father always got up early. I planned to talk to him first, and if he decides that his wife should hear it, he will wake her up. I saw smoke rising from the wood stove in his backyard workshop, so I knocked on the door before entering. He saw scratches on my neck and a bruise on my cheek. I explained that there had been an accident and Amy was more seriously injured, but we needed to talk. I think he thought it would be about the accident, so he woke up my mother-in-law so she could hear what I had to say. We sat down in the kitchen, and I explained that at the turn, a car from the oncoming lane drove into ours. Thanks to the fact that we had a heavier car and four-wheel drive, I managed to stay on the road until we crashed into the guardrail. The passenger side door caught one of the vertical beams set in the concrete. Despite the airbags, Amy was hit hard. She suffered multiple injuries, but I said she was in stable condition and doctors expected a full recovery. They both cried when they learned that their daughter was hurt but would still be with them, and they could continue to love her. As soon as they hinted that they were willing to help me in any way possible to take care of Amy, I left them and explained that the accident was not what I came to them about. They looked puzzled. Then I told her how I woke up that morning, sent a text, and headed out into the snow to make sure my wife was okay. I told them how I walked in and saw their daughter with some guy I didn't know, and how I unconsciously beat him over and over again. They were both shocked. I then told them what room she was in at the hospital and explained that I had always wanted them to be a part of our children's lives. Therefore, I hope that they can maintain friendly relations with me. I told them that my father is currently looking after the children, but I am divorcing their daughter because she broke our vows and is no longer my wife. And I went home from them to my father to tell the children about the accident. I was also going to tell them that their mom and I were no longer together, but I wasn't going to say that their mother was a cheater. I told my ex-in-laws that while it hurts me that it ended this way, at least I can say that I wasn't the one who ruined our marriage and my life. They tried to tell me that there was no need to rush so much, that she had made a mistake, and they started throwing in the usual excuses. I simply smiled and said that it was a pleasure to have them as relatives all these years, and then he left. When I came to my father, I of course had accumulated a lot of things that needed to be shared. I walked into the kitchen where my father was drinking coffee. All he knew was that I was supposed to be on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. He stood up and asked what I was doing here. I just hugged him and started crying like a baby. This was a case where he really wanted to know what was going on, but felt he needed to let me cry first. He took me into the living room and sat me down on the sofa while he followed my mother. We both insisted that she drink a cup of coffee first, but she already realized that if I was here alone so early, it meant something had happened. First, I told how Amy cheated, how I caught her and left Sarah. I then explained that there had been an accident and that it was quite serious. I told them about Amy's injuries and that I had only informed her parents an hour ago so they could visit her. The parents were shocked. Mom finally asked what I was going to do now. They both cried when I told them that the only option left for me was to divorce Amy and be the best father I could be to my children. As our conversation was ending, I heard my daughter Haley scream, "Daddy!" and ran down the stairs towards me. This woke up my son, who also joined us a couple of minutes later. I hadn't seen them for so long that I just spent time hugging them and being happy to see them. It took them a while to notice my scratches. I told them about the accident and that their mom was in the hospital, but she would be fine. I said her parents would pick them up so they could visit their mom and left it at that. I spent the day playing, talking, cuddling, napping, and laughing with my children. And they were the ones who made me want to live again. Until that moment, to be honest, I was 50-50 in terms of whether I wanted to live at all. But children are truly worth living for, protecting, and loving. My wife's phone was destroyed in the accident, so no one heard from her for several days. That evening, I started receiving messages from my mother-in-law's phone and realized they were from Amy. I ignored them. They kept coming sporadically throughout the night, but I turned off the notifications. The next day, I spoke with 3 law firms about filing for divorce. I can't say that I want or even need a legal divorce, but it will allow me to divide property and resolve the issue of child custody. What she does and with whom she does no longer concerns me. I met with 2 lawyers, and I like the second one much better. I will meet the third, who is considered the best, to see if he can surprise me. If not, I will go with the lead lawyer of the second firm. In any case, I have eliminated the top 3 lawyers from the list of possible candidates. For her, and this is already a victory in my eyes. Guardianship is my main goal. I don't claim full custody and wouldn't even want it if I could get it. Children need their mother, but because of what she did, she can never be a part of my life again. Someone else will drop off and pick up the children for their errands. There is not a single reason in this world why I should ever speak to her again. I obviously never really knew her, so why should I continue to communicate with a stranger? I'm heading back to work next week after what should have been our cruise. At work, I didn't tell anyone that we weren't going anywhere, and he didn't mention anything about the accident at all. Of course, they will see that I am driving a rental car and will ask if I bought a new one. I'm not sure if I need to explain things, make jokes, or go off topic, but I definitely don't want my private affairs to become public knowledge. I already have enough humiliation for this to be discussed at work. Divorce is sometimes necessary. However, it always symbolizes failure. However, I am no longer going to be an anchor for a ship that has already sunk. And for those who rightly advised me to get tested for STDs, I underwent a full examination, and the results were negative on all counts. God bless. Even that made me feel like some kind of pervert, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I think that by this time, Amy had already been discharged from the hospital. Her parents didn't even try to bring her home, even though they wouldn't be able to contact me because of Amy's constant messages that I didn't read. Once I can file the divorce papers and serve them on her, I can complete this major mistake of my life. Her action devalued the time we spent together. If I had the opportunity to live it all over again, I would not make this choice again. I would prefer life with anyone else, who would actually be faithful and devoted. Her greatest asset, her ability to be reliable, was thrown away by herself. I will long for the time when you could call someone your family. And now there is only emptiness left. But now I know it was all a lie and I meant nothing to her. People tend to admire beautiful lies and turn away from ugly truths. I'm not one of those people. Many wanted to know the dirty details. Who did my wife cheat on me with? Why? And how long did this last? Sorry, but I don't have this information. And frankly, I don't want to know it. Short of literally putting a gun to your head, there's no excuse for cheating when you create a marriage bond and promise to keep it, and then decide to have some other leftist person destroy it. It's low. I wish I had never met her and chosen someone else. Anyone. She had no right to give me life, and then take it all from me against my will. The person I was before her betrayal no longer exists. The woman she was never existed, and the life I had was just a facade, in the ruins of which no one would want to live. Update 2. Probably the first thing to say is that I managed to find a very good lawyer. Her firm is top-rated for representing men in divorce proceedings. Instead of handing my case over to someone on the team, she took it over. Everyone at the firm was kind and supportive. I feel that it is important for them not only to get a fee. Lauren, my advocate, does everything she can to help me maintain my well-being and sanity. After she agreed to take the case, we filled out the standard forms. I included what assets I owned, all my bank accounts, and an estimate of how much Amy and I made. After I talked about the accident and what I saw in front of it, she asked if I had been tested for STDs. I replied that yes, they didn't find anything. She then asked if I had documented it. I replied that I was unable to think rationally. To do this, she called the private detective with whom her company works and made an appointment for the next day. I live in a state where infidelity is considered grounds for divorce. So even though I knew Amy was unfaithful, I needed proof to get the divorce in my favor. We agreed that one of the employees of her company would be an intermediary between me and Amy's father to communicate and organize meetings with the children. Her assistant told my father-in-law in advance that my ex could pick up the kids for the upcoming weekend and next week. Lauren then asked if I had arranged therapy for myself and the children. I explained that I had my first appointment with a therapist for that week. But since the children were not yet aware of everything, I postponed this issue with them for now. She said that as soon as I felt that the children needed professional help, I should tell her, and she would recommend several good specialists. She expressed, in my opinion, sincere condolences for what I had to go through, and what I still have to go through. I don't usually like lawyers, but I think this time I found one with a soul. She gave me a list of things to pack and get done before our next meeting. Many of these instructions were the same as advice I had seen online. So when she said I needed to go to the pharmacy and buy 2 DNA tests, I didn't think much of it. I knew this was standard procedure. When I returned home in the evening with the children, I took swabs from the mouth. For me and for them, sealed everything and mailed it to the laboratory. After dropping the kids off at school the next morning, Friday came 2 days later and I took the kids to their grandfather's for the weekend. I went to work in the morning and was just returning from lunch when I received an email notification. I saw 2 letters from the lab and decided to wait until I got to the computer to look at them. At my desk, I opened the first letter and clicked on the link. The results showed that my son Jacob was indeed my son. I opened the second letter, clicked on the link, read what it said, read it again. Then, more. I couldn't say anything. He just shook his head. I realized that I needed to get out of the office as quickly as possible before I lost my composure. I sat in the car and began to sob as the realization that my daughter Haley was not my daughter completely consumed me. I think that even losing my arm would hurt me less than losing my daughter. Honestly, it felt like my soul was taken from me. I didn't know who to call. I just sat there crying and praying for this nightmare to end. I downloaded the files from the email and sent them to my lawyer. 20 seconds later, Lauren called and asked where I was. I could only answer, "At work." She told me to stay put and someone from her team would come pick me up in a few minutes. I ended the call, opened the car door, and started vomiting uncontrollably until I began to simply choke. The vomiting stopped, but my head was still dizzy. At that moment, one of the law firm's assistants arrived to pick me up. She drove me to the firm, and as soon as Lauren finished with the client, I was taken straight to her office. The first thing she said was that sometimes tests can be wrong. She said she understood how upset I was and that I had every right to be, but she strongly recommended that Haley be retested at a local lab to ensure there were no possible errors. I couldn't believe what was happening. Even after I caught Amy cheating, I thought DNA tests for children were just a formality. I would never have thought that my wife could be so unfaithful. But if you imagine that she could get pregnant from another man, then damn it, this is not the woman I married. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't resist Amy right now. After all, I had no evidence. And yet, if the results confirm what we already almost knew, I can't even imagine how we will be able to talk about it. One of the company's employees measured my blood pressure to make sure I was normal. It was elevated, and I felt like I was on the verge of a panic attack. I thought, what will happen next? I had a hard time coming to terms with the idea that my little girl might never have been mine. At that moment, I was glad that the children stayed with their mother. I started to think, what if both tests are wrong and Haley is still my daughter, and Jacob is not? I knew I couldn't wait 2 more days to find out the truth, so he arranged for a mediator to pick up Haley for a few hours the next day and take her back to Amy's parents. We conducted the test in a sterile environment in the presence of medical professionals. There was no mistake. I am not Haley's father. The results came a day later when she was already with her mother. After that, I cried even more, and I was glad that Haley didn't see it. I sent the results to my lawyer, and she called to see how I was doing. She strongly recommended seeking family support and not trying to cope alone. I got into the car and drove to my father, crying the whole way. When I arrived and saw my mother, she realized that something was wrong, but could not get out of me what it was. In the end, all I could manage was, "Haley is not my daughter." Mom asked, "What?" But she already knew that she had heard everything correctly. I was unable to repeat. After about 30 seconds of silence filled only by my uncontrollable sobs, she stood up, picked up the phone, and called my father. I told him to hurry home, but to be careful because I had bad news. I felt that my father would have wanted a hint of what could have been so terrible, but she only asked him to be careful and come as soon as possible. He returned 20 minutes later, and we all cried together for a long time. I consoled my father. He consoled his mother. They consoled me, but to be honest, there was no consolation for any of us. They, of course, asked about Jacob, and I assured them that he was indeed my son. Both were relieved and then felt guilty that they were glad to lose only one grandchild. They asked what I was going to do. I said, I don't know. The only thing I was sure of at that moment was that Haley would never want for anything. I wasn't worried about possible child support. At that moment, I just knew she would be safe. As bad as I felt about this situation, I felt even more bad for Haley, who was absolutely not to blame for this. Do I want custody of her? Will I be able to get custody of Haley if I want? I started to wonder, did Amy know about this, or at least suspected? Suddenly, I needed answers to all these damn questions. I met with Lauren after work on Monday, and she told me that she had already contacted the private investigator hired to follow Amy. Because of the accident, she didn't leave the house to cheat anymore, so I wasn't surprised that no fresh evidence came to light. But Lauren asked me to bring Amy's old phone, which was in a drawer at home. The detective was able to access almost all of the apps as if it were her lost phone. He found dozens of nude photos sent and received from different men, countless messages and sexting, with confessions of guilt enough to convince any judge. I was asked if I wanted to see photos or read messages. I refused. But Lauren and I had to discuss how I was going to talk to Amy about Haley. Lauren offered to do it in her office if she could convince Amy to come. She called Amy's mother's phone right in front of me. I heard Amy's voice for the first time since I left the hospital. Lauren got straight to the point and said Amy needed to meet with me to explain herself. My ex stated that she had been waiting for this conversation and wanted to talk. She was asked if she had a lawyer. Amy replied that she did not have a lawyer but was willing to come the next day to talk. I barely managed to get through this day without bursting into tears. I arrived earlier and sat further away from the door. I couldn't get close to her. I looked through photos of our perfect family that never existed. When she walked in, she was having trouble walking and was still wearing 2 casts from the accident. I didn't have to worry about her trying to hug me. I thought she might be faking it to gain pity, but we actually had a serious accident. I just wanted her to sit down and explain. Once we were all seated, we were offered water, and the meeting began. My lawyer started by asking if Amy would mind if we recorded the meeting. She didn't mind. As soon as we started recording, my wife tried to apologize. I abruptly interrupted her and asked directly, how many men did she cheat on me with, and when did it start? There was enough confirmation from the private detective to know that the guy I caught was far from the first. Of course, she didn't know what we knew, and apparently, to lessen the severity of what happened before the accident, her plan was to admit only what she thought we knew. I asked her again, approximately how many men has she slept with since our son was born? The specific time period gave her a moment to think, but she continued to pretend she didn't understand. At that point, she still thought it was a game, and I was starting to get impatient. Lauren put her hand on my shoulder and gently pulled me away from the table. She looked at Amy and asked, have I been a good father? Amy immediately gave me an excellent testimonial, saying that she could not have asked for a better father to raise her children. I wanted to get up and turn the table when she said their children. Lauren then asked, will her baby's other father be a good dad too? While Amy was asking who the other father was, my lawyer gave her the results of Haley's paternity test. As much as I hated what my life had become since I found out about her cheating, I needed to see her reaction in person. She was clearly shocked that Haley was not my daughter. She tried to put pressure on me with the words, but you were her father. You raised her. And I had to stop it. I asked her, who is Haley's father? She looked down with a hint of shame. I thought she was trying to protect someone, but when she said that doesn't know for sure who Haley's father is, I felt that the bottom had not yet been reached. Amy saw me truly break down and cry for the first time. I couldn't take it anymore and lost my composure. Amy also cried, but asked to give her an attempt to explain herself. She reminded me of the postpartum depression she went through after Jacob was born. At that time, I tried to be as understanding as possible. I can confidently say that I spent every possible moment taking care of our son, so that she could have time to herself. There were days when she was so depressed that she couldn't even get out of bed, and I took care of us all. But I enjoyed it all. I loved doing it, for the family that I had. Alas, I was so naive that I thought that if we overcome this, our marriage will become stronger, but no. Amy didn't blame Sarah for this at all. When she first persuaded her to go to a bachelorette party, I was more pleased than outraged. They had been best friends for many years but had barely seen each other during their pregnancy. Amy said that at the second such party, she got very drunk and allowed some guy to touch her while she was pleasing him. She said she felt guilty about it for a while, several months. But then she began to feel resentful that she was not allowed to be young and free, to be with whomever she wanted. She said that she started seeing men every night she went out with Sarah until the night before our accident. She never even came home late. She claimed that she did not want to develop feelings for any of these men. She claimed that she always used protection and never slept with the same guy more than 3 times. She, according to her, just needed intimacy. I was stunned. The fact that your wife is a dirty liar is really confusing. It's like suddenly realizing that your whole life is a reality show that you didn't sign up to participate in. I wanted to scream at her, but I was too busy thinking about how many men she had cheated on me with all these years. Lauren asked her if she had any idea who Haley's father might be. Amy swore she always thought it was me. My lawyer suggested that something might have happened. For example, the contraceptive had broken. When my wife admitted that this had happened several times with different men, I lost my composure. I asked her who the hell she was because I didn't know the person who was telling me this. As if she was talking about some trifle, like pass the salt. I asked when she started hating me and why. What have I done to deserve this kind of treatment? How could she do this to her daughter? I screamed furiously. She was silent, accepting it, knowing that it was all true. After what she just said and after I expressed my feelings about her, divorce was a foregone conclusion. Our marriage has become a scorched earth. The only thing left was to count the number of victims. I lost my wife and daughter. That's already 2 victims. The wife lost her husband. This is the 3rd. The daughter lost her father. And the brother lost his sister, who turned out to be half a stranger. And then there are grandparents, relatives. Amy actually destroyed 2 families. Her parents definitely wouldn't be able to accept what she did. I swear to all that is holy that I will show them all the evidence that the private investigator has collected. Amy admitted meeting men on a dating app with Sarah and using hen parties to cheat. She claimed that she never meant to hurt me. She swore she didn't know Haley wasn't my daughter. I even believe her, but DNA doesn't lie. I asked why she didn't just divorce me. She answered honestly that she did not want to lose the security that I provided her. She was crying. All this was said through tears, but I know that my expression was full of contempt. I was sick of the man who was sitting opposite me. I felt used, humiliated, dishonored. I felt broken. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons she came to the meeting without a lawyer was because I own all the property. She doesn't have much to lose except a small retirement account. My assets are an inheritance that I received when I was 14 years old from my maternal grandfather. The woman I call mom is not my biological mother. My birth mother died when I was 2 years old from a rare form of cancer that progressed rapidly. My father married my current mother when I was 4. I always knew that she was not my birth mother and that I was not her birth son. Later, I learned that she could not have children, and raising me helped her overcome this sad fact. When my biological mother's father died, her inheritance passed to me. But I couldn't touch it until I was 21. I studied well and went to university, but I don't have to work. My wife knows that in the divorce, I will crush her into powder, and she can't see any half like her ears. She has a job, and although she cannot work yet due to injuries, she has a job. Part of me wants to punish her, but the other part wants to just get it over with. Amy was clearly on painkillers. Maybe that's why she was so frank, but her words literally pierced me, making everything even more painful. I asked if she felt any shame. She claimed yes. I asked, how the hell are we going to find out who Haley's father really is? My wife began her usual monologue about how I already know who is her father, and I was in no mood for any philosophical discussions about what it meant to be a father. Haley's real father deserves to know about her, and she needs to know about him, at least for medical reasons. The evidence the private investigator found did not extend to before Haley's birth. I asked Amy if she could find any of these men. Maybe she kept their names. She had the audacity to say that she deliberately deleted their numbers so that she would never see them again. Lord, why didn't I notice this about her before? Snobbish, arrogant logic. I told her that maybe she should have kept at least one number, to let him know that he was having a baby, or that she might have contracted some disease. I want my name removed from Haley's birth certificate. DNA proved that she was her mother's child, but not mine. As I said, I will support her financially of my own free will, even after she turns 18. She will not want for anything. As for my son in custody, I honestly don't know what to do. Before the paternity test, my plan was to seek an agreement where my ex-wife would have custody one weekend a month on certain holidays, about 9/10. Now that Haley is not my daughter, I don't feel like it's right to seek custody of her, even if I could get it. And since Jacob still remains her brother, albeit half, taking a brother away from a child also seems like a so-so idea. I don't want any of them to suffer. I haven't seen Haley since I found out the test results, and I can't let her see how torn I am about it. God knows how much her therapy will cost, but I'll pay for it. It is unknown whether her real father can afford to pay for these services. By working with me alone, some psychotherapist may earn enough for a whole house by the sea. As I drove home after the meeting, a huge part of me just wanted to get it all over with. It seemed like the best solution for everyone except me. Both could continue to live their lives pretending about parenthood. My ex would openly act like a boss by spending my grandfather's money, and children would not have to face the consequences of divorce and broken relationships. But by the time I got home, I said to myself, fuck it. Lauren is preparing divorce papers and legal papers to have me removed from Haley's birth certificate. This will drag out the legal process, but I don't want any legal basis that would force me to interact, pay, or deal with someone else's child. The physics team is also looking into ways to find Haley's real father. Many genealogy sites offer information about potential relatives. Even if the results do not point to a specific person, they may point to a brother, cousin, or other relative. Whoever he is, perhaps he is not ready to accept this child, whose existence he did not know. This may make him anxious, but I doubt his anxiety will be anywhere near the horror I felt at losing my daughter forever, because she never existed. Everything is so confusing now. Nothing is stable. Chaos has become a daily burden. To be continued. Overall, thanks for watching. Write your thoughts in the comments. Watch our previous video. It will appear here. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part of this story. Well, good luck to you.